Fiancée demanded I take a lie detector test, so I made her go first, and her answers ended everything. I discovered this little demand when I woke up Saturday morning to 17 notifications on my phone, all about Amanda's Facebook post that had apparently gone live while I was sleeping. I scrolled through my coffee-hazed morning routine until I saw it, posted at 11:47 p.m. the night before while I was dead asleep next to her. Real love means total transparency. If you truly have nothing to hide, you should be willing to take a polygraph test to prove your faithfulness before marriage. Anyone who refuses is obviously hiding something. My fiancé should be excited to show me he's trustworthy enough to be my husband. That's what real commitment looks like. The post already had 43 likes and 28 comments, most from her friends agreeing that any man worth marrying would jump at the chance to prove his loyalty. I took a screenshot before she could delete it and texted her while she was in the shower. Saw your post. Interesting way to communicate with your future husband. She replied an hour later with zero acknowledgement of how bizarre this was. You're overthinking it. It's just about being open and honest with each other. By demanding I take a lie detector test? Without discussing it with me first. If you have nothing to hide, what's the problem? This shows I trust our relationship enough to be completely transparent. I stared at that response for a solid 5 minutes, trying to figure out when my fiancé had transformed into someone who made unilateral decisions about our relationship via social media. Actually, you're right about transparency. I think we should both take polygraph tests. You know, equal treatment and all that. The typing bubble appeared immediately, disappeared, then reappeared. That's completely different. I'm not the one with trust issues. Trust issues? Amanda, you literally just demanded I take a lie detector test on Facebook? I was just making a point about commitment. You're being totally unreasonable. Great. Then you'll have no problem going first, since you're so committed to transparency. She called me 30 seconds later, voice tight with frustration. Jake, this is ridiculous. I was talking about you proving yourself to me, not the other way around. Why should it only go one way? If polygraphs are such a great relationship tool, let's both use them. Because I'm not the one acting suspicious lately. I'm not the one working late all the time and being secretive about my phone. Working late. My job as a software engineer required actual deadlines and project completion, unlike her marketing coordinator position where she spent half her day on social media. As for being secretive about my phone, I'd started password protecting it after catching her reading my texts to my sister about how controlling she'd become. So you're saying you trust me so little that you need scientific proof I'm faithful, but I should just take your word for everything? That's not what I'm saying at all. But that was exactly what she was saying. After an hour of circular arguments where she insisted I was missing the point while refusing to take her own transparency test, she announced she was staying at her sister's place that night to think about whether I was even mature enough for marriage. Before she left, I watched her pack an overnight bag while muttering about how she never expected her own fiancé to turn her own idea against her. The Facebook post stayed up, continuing to collect supportive comments from her friends about how any real man would eagerly prove his dedication to the woman he loves. Monday morning, I did exactly what I'd promised and booked 2 appointments with professional polygraph services downtown, scheduling Amanda for Wednesday at 2 p.m. and myself for Thursday at the same time. I forwarded her the confirmation email with the subject line, "Transparency for both of us," and included the examiner's credentials. Robert Chen, former FBI agent with 15 years of experience in forensic polygraph examination. My phone rang within minutes. Jake, what the hell is this? You actually booked appointments. You said transparency was important for our relationship. I agreed with you. This is completely insane. You're invading my privacy by scheduling me for some interrogation without my permission. The irony was absolutely stunning. She'd publicly demanded I take a lie detector test, but me booking the same thing for her was an invasion of privacy. Amanda, you literally posted on Facebook that anyone unwilling to take a polygraph is obviously hiding something. Your exact words. That was about you, not me. I don't need to prove anything. So when you demand proof, it's about love and commitment. When I ask for the same proof, it's an invasion. She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, her father called, which was unprecedented since we barely spoke beyond polite greetings at family dinners. "Jake, Amanda told me about this ridiculous polygraph situation. You need to cancel these appointments immediately." "Hi, Mr. Patterson. I'm just following Amanda's lead on relationship transparency. This is absurd. My daughter doesn't need to subject herself to some pseudoscientific interrogation because you're feeling insecure." Insecure? That was rich, coming from the father of the woman who demanded scientific proof of my faithfulness via Facebook announcement. "With respect, sir, Amanda made this public. She's the one who said polygraphs prove trustworthiness in relationships. She was talking about you specifically, not herself. There's a difference." Apparently, there was always a difference when the tables were turned. By Tuesday afternoon, Amanda's best friend Taylor had texted me asking to meet for coffee at the diner near my office. I agreed, curious to see what intervention strategy they developed. Taylor arrived looking serious, sliding into the booth across from me with the determined expression of someone on a mission. "Jake, I need you to understand that Amanda is really upset about this whole polygraph thing." "I'm sure she is. Change of perspective can be uncomfortable. She feels like you're trying to humiliate her." The Facebook post was just her way of expressing how important honesty is to her. By demanding I take a lie detector test without discussing it with me first? She was just being passionate about your relationship. You're taking it too literally. I sipped my coffee, watching Taylor try to spin Amanda's public ultimatum as some kind of romantic gesture. "Taylor," she said, "anyone who refuses a polygraph is obviously hiding something. I'm just applying her own logic equally." But that's different. Amanda's not the one with suspicious behavior. What's suspicious behavior? Working late on software projects. She mentioned you've been secretive about your phone lately. The phone I'd password protected because Amanda had been reading my private conversations. So let me get this straight. Amanda can demand I take a polygraph test, post about it publicly, and question my faithfulness, but me asking for equal treatment makes me the bad guy. Taylor shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe you both should just forget the whole thing and move on." I'm perfectly willing to move on. Right after we both take these transparency tests Amanda thinks are so important. When I got home that evening, Amanda was waiting in my living room, having used her key to let herself in. She looked like she'd been crying, but her expression was more angry than sad. "We need to talk about Thursday." "What about Thursday?" "I'm not taking that test, Jake. This has gone way too far." "So you're saying you won't take the same test you demanded I take?" "It's completely different and you know it." I sat down across from her, genuinely curious about the mental gymnastics this would require. "Explain how it's different." "Because I trust you enough not to need proof. This whole thing was about you showing me the same trust. By taking a lie detector test while you refuse to take one yourself. That's not trust, Amanda. That's submission." She stared at me for a long moment, probably realizing that her own public statement had backed her into a corner she couldn't gracefully escape. "Fine. If you cancel both appointments, we can pretend this never happened. The appointments are tomorrow and Thursday. We're both going, just like you originally wanted." Wednesday afternoon, I sat in the waiting room of Professional Polygraph Services on the 14th floor of a downtown business complex, watching Amanda pace near the floor-to-ceiling windows. She'd barely spoken during the drive here, just stared out the passenger window with her arms crossed, radiating hostile energy. The office was surprisingly professional, nothing like the sketchy interrogation rooms you see in movies. Clean carpet, comfortable chairs, certificates on the walls, and a receptionist who treated this like any other medical appointment. Robert emerged from his examination room at exactly 2 p.m., a calm, methodical man in his 50s who explained the process with detached professionalism. "Ms. Patterson, we'll start with a pre-test interview where I explain the procedure and we review the questions your fiancé submitted. The actual examination takes about 90 minutes, followed by analysis." Amanda shot me a look that could have melted steel. Questions he submitted? Standard procedure. Mr. Davidson provided a comprehensive list focused on fidelity and honesty in your relationship. I'd spent considerable time crafting those questions, keeping them specific and verifiable rather than vague emotional queries that wouldn't produce reliable results. Robert led Amanda into the examination room, and I settled in for what I knew would be a long wait. The receptionist offered me coffee and magazines, but I couldn't concentrate on anything except the muffled sounds coming from behind the closed door. Occasionally, I heard Amanda's voice, sometimes defensive, sometimes animated, but Robert's responses were too quiet to make out. After 2.5 hours, the door finally opened. Amanda emerged looking pale and shaken, avoiding eye contact as she walked directly to the elevator without saying a word. Robert approached me with a neutral expression that gave nothing away. "Mr. Davidson, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" We stepped into his office, where he closed the door and gestured for me to sit down. His demeanor remained professional, but there was something in his eyes that made my stomach clench. "The results show clear deception indicators on several critical questions," he said quietly. "I need to be direct with you because these patterns are unmistakable. Your fiancée showed significant physiological responses consistent with deception when asked about her faithfulness during your relationship and whether she's currently in contact with anyone she's been romantically involved with." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "How significant?" "The indicators are strong enough that I would recommend you have a serious conversation with her about the specific areas where deception was detected." Robert handed me a sealed envelope containing the full results. When I walked out to the lobby, Amanda was standing by the elevator, jabbing the call button repeatedly. Her face was flushed, and she looked like she might throw up. "The machine malfunctioned," she said the moment she saw me, her voice too loud in the quiet lobby. "Those things are completely unreliable. Everyone knows polygraphs aren't even admissible in court because they're pseudoscience." I didn't respond, just pressed the elevator call button myself since her frantic pushing clearly wasn't working. "Did he tell you anything?" she asked, trying to sound casual but failing completely. "Just that we should discuss the results together." "There's nothing to discuss. The machine was obviously broken." My heart rate was elevated because I was nervous. The elevator ride down to the parking garage was silent except for Amanda's shallow breathing. She kept glancing at me like she was waiting for me to say something that would give her an opening to continue her machine malfunction theory. When the doors opened, she walked quickly toward my car, her heels clicking against the concrete in an erratic rhythm that matched her obvious panic. I unlocked the doors and we both got in, but instead of starting the engine, I turned to face her. "Amanda, we need to talk about what just happened in there. I told you, the machine was broken. Robert probably doesn't even know how to calibrate those things properly. Former FBI agent or not, those machines are notoriously unreliable." She was talking too fast, her words tumbling over each other like a teenager making excuses. "The results showed deception indicators when you were asked about faithfulness and current contact with romantic interests." Her face went completely white. "That's impossible. Those questions were loaded and unfair. How am I supposed to answer something like that when I'm being interrogated by a stranger?" "By telling the truth. It's actually pretty straightforward. Jake, you have to believe me. I've never cheated on you. Never." But even as she said it, she couldn't meet my eyes. Instead, she stared out the windshield at the concrete wall, her hands twisting in her lap. "Then explain the test results." "I can't explain faulty equipment. Maybe my blood pressure medication threw off the readings. Maybe I was having an anxiety attack." Each excuse sounded more desperate than the last. I sat there watching her cycle through explanations, and something about her panic finally broke through my own shock. "Amanda, just tell me the truth. Whatever it is, just be honest with me." She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her internal struggle playing out across her face. Finally, her shoulders sagged and she started crying, not the pretty tears she used when she wanted sympathy, but ugly, messy sobs that shook her whole body. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Jake." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Sorry for what?" "Kevin. My personal trainer. We've been seeing each other for 6 months. 6 months. I felt something cold and hollow open up in my chest. Seeing each other how? It started as just coffee after our sessions. Then dinners. Then weekend trips when I told you I was doing those fitness retreats with the girls. Those weekend retreats. I'd actually been proud of her for prioritizing her health and making time for female friendships. How long has it been physical? Since month 2. But Jake, it's over now. It ended 2 months ago when Kevin wanted me to leave you for him, and I realized I couldn't do that. I chose you. She chose me. After 4 months of sleeping with another man, she chose me. You chose me after cheating on me for 4 months. It wasn't supposed to happen. Kevin made me feel things I hadn't felt in years. Alive, desired, exciting. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. But when he gave me an ultimatum, I realized what we had wasn't real. What you and I have is real. I stared at her, trying to process the magnitude of what she was telling me. So for 6 months, you've been lying to me every single day. Looking me in the eye and lying about where you were, who you were with, what you were doing. I hated lying to you. It was killing me inside. But not enough to stop. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. Jake, please. It's over with Kevin. It has been for 2 months. I want to marry you. I started the car, needing something to do with my hands while my mind reeled. As we drove home in silence, I found myself mentally cataloging all the lies, all the times she'd come home from girls' nights, smelling like cologne that wasn't mine, all the mysterious phone calls she'd taken in the other room. Say something, she pleaded as we pulled into my driveway. I don't know what to say, Amanda. You've been living a double life for half a year. I know how this looks, but I love you. I made a terrible mistake, but I chose you in the end. You chose me after your boyfriend demanded you leave me for him. That's not the same thing. I woke up Thursday morning to find Amanda's side of the bed empty, which wasn't surprising since she'd spent most of the night crying and I'd spent most of it staring at the ceiling. What was surprising was opening my front door at 8 a.m. to find her parents and her sister Rebecca standing on my porch, looking like they'd come to stage an intervention. Jake, we need to talk, her mother said, pushing past me into my living room without invitation. Amanda told us what happened yesterday, and frankly, we're appalled by your behavior. I closed the door and turned to face the three of them, noting that Rebecca had brought a leather portfolio that probably contained legal documents. My behavior? This polygraph nonsense has gone entirely too far, her father said, settling into my armchair like he owned the place. You've humiliated our daughter with some pseudo-scientific charade. Things that probably never happened. So they either didn't know about Kevin, or they were choosing to ignore it. Mr. Patterson, Amanda confessed to a 6-month affair with her personal trainer. Under duress, Rebecca interjected, opening her portfolio. Polygraph results aren't admissible in court for a reason. They're unreliable, especially when administered to someone under extreme emotional stress. I stared at Amanda's sister, a successful family law attorney who was apparently prepared to argue that her sister's detailed confession was somehow inadmissible in the court of our relationship. She wasn't under duress when she spent 6 months lying to me about weekend trips with Kevin. Alleged trips, Rebecca corrected, based on a confession extracted through psychological pressure. Amanda's mother stood up abruptly. Even if Amanda made some mistakes, you've destroyed any chance of working through them by putting her through this humiliating ordeal. Good relationships require forgiveness and understanding, not interrogation and punishment. Mistakes. A 6-month affair was a mistake, like accidentally double-booking dinner reservations. The wedding is in 6 weeks, her mother continued. We've already spent $18,000 on deposits that are non-refundable. The venue, the caterer, the photographer, the flowers. You can't just throw that all away because of some misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. That's what we were calling systematic deception now. Mrs. Patterson, most of those contracts are in my name. I'm fully prepared to lose that money rather than marry someone who's been cheating on me for half our engagement. Rebecca pulled out a thick stack of papers. Actually, Jake, since you initiated this destructive polygraph process and caused Amanda significant emotional distress, you could be liable for much more than just the wedding deposits. Breach of promise to marry is still actionable in this state. She was threatening to sue me for discovering that my fiancé was cheating. You're saying I should be financially responsible for Amanda's affair? I'm saying you're responsible for the malicious way you've handled this situation. I walked to my kitchen and poured myself coffee, needing a moment to process the fact that I was being gaslit by 3 people simultaneously. When I returned, they were huddled together whispering. Here's what's going to happen, her father announced. You're going to apologize to Amanda for this entire debacle. You're going to acknowledge that the polygraph was inappropriate and the results are meaningless. And you're going to commit to couples counseling before the wedding. And if I don't? Then you'll be hearing from Rebecca's law firm, her mother said coldly. I walked to the front closet and pulled out the small velvet box I'd been carrying in my jacket pocket since Tuesday. I opened it and set the engagement ring on the coffee table between us. Here's what's actually going to happen. Amanda and I are done. You can keep the ring or return it, I don't care. But I'm not marrying someone who spent 6 months cheating on me. The 3 of them stared at the ring like I just detonated a bomb in my living room. Jake, you're making a terrible mistake, Amanda's mother said, her voice shaking. Our daughter loves you. She chose me after Kevin gave her an ultimatum. That's settling, not choosing. Rebecca snapped her portfolio shut. Fine. You'll be hearing from our attorney. We'll be seeking damages for breach of promise, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and defamation. Defamation? For telling people about Amanda's alleged affair without reliable proof. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshot of Amanda's original Facebook post. Should I post this along with the polygraph results? Let people decide for themselves. The threat landed exactly as intended. Rebecca's confident expression faltered, and her parents exchanged worried glances. They'd forgotten that Amanda had made this public first. They left within 5 minutes, taking the ring and their legal threats with them. By Friday afternoon, Amanda had posted her version of events on social media, and it was a masterpiece of victim narrative construction. Sometimes you think you know someone, and then they show you who they really are. After 3 years together, my ex-fiancé decided to cancel our wedding over trust issues that existed only in his head. I guess I dodged a bullet by finding out now that he's the type of man who would rather destroy something beautiful than work through normal relationship challenges. The post had 67 likes and 43 comments within hours, most from her friends expressing shock and outrage on her behalf. What Amanda hadn't counted on was our mutual friends asking questions. Real questions about what had actually happened, because the timeline didn't make sense to people who knew both of us. Mike, a college friend, commented publicly, "Wait, didn't you post something last week about wanting Jake to take a polygraph test? What happened with that?" Amanda's response was immediate, that was taken completely out of context. It was just a conversation about trust that he twisted into something sinister. But other friends started chiming in, asking about the polygraph post that had mysteriously disappeared from her timeline. Within hours, someone had screenshot the original post and was sharing it in group chats. The narrative was shifting, and Amanda was losing control of it. But the real bomb dropped Sunday evening when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Jake Davidson?" The voice was female, older, hesitant. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Lisa Hartwell. I'm Kevin's wife." I sat down slowly, my stomach dropping. Kevin was married. "I think we need to talk," she continued. "I found some text messages on my husband's phone, and your ex-fiancé's name came up quite a bit. We met at a coffee shop Monday morning. Lisa was a pleasant woman in her early 30s, a kindergarten teacher with kind eyes that looked exhausted. She'd brought a manila folder filled with printed screenshots. "Kevin and I have been married for 4 years, she said, sliding the folder across the table. "I found these yesterday when I was looking for photos on his phone." The screenshots were devastating. Text conversations between Amanda and Kevin going back 8 months, not 6. But the worst part was the timestamps. "This one is from 3 weeks ago," Lisa said, pointing to a particular exchange. "Look at the date." My blood ran cold. 3 weeks ago was after Amanda had supposedly ended things with Kevin. After she'd chosen me. The message read, "Miss you. Think about our weekend at the lake constantly. When can we see each other again?" Kevin's response, "Soon. Just need to figure out the logistics." Jake's been suspicious lately. Amanda's reply, "Don't worry about Jake. I've got that handled. I'm thinking of giving him one final test to make sure he's completely under control, then we can plan our next move." One final test. The polygraph demand hadn't been about trust or transparency. It had been about power and control, and probably about laying groundwork for leaving me if I'd failed or refused. "There's more," Lisa said, flipping through the pages. "They were talking about you constantly, planning ways to make you look unstable if you ever found out. Amanda was documenting conversations you had, taking notes about your daily routines. I felt sick reading my own private moments dissected and strategized over by two people who were actively deceiving me. I'm filing for divorce," Lisa said quietly. "Kevin confessed to everything once I confronted him. But I thought you should know that Amanda wasn't just cheating on you, she was actively manipulating you while planning to continue the affair." I thanked Lisa and offered to provide any support she needed. She gave me copies of the most damning text exchanges, saying I might need them if Amanda's family followed through on their legal threats. By Tuesday, word had spread through our social circle about Kevin's marriage and the text messages. Friends who'd initially supported Amanda's victim narrative were quietly deleting their supportive comments. Amanda tried one last desperate move Wednesday evening, showing up at my workplace as I was leaving. She looked haggard, like she hadn't slept in days. "Jake, please, we need to talk. I can explain everything about Kevin." Those text messages were taken out of context. "The ones from 3 weeks ago where you were planning your next weekend together?" Her face crumbled. "I never meant for any of this to happen. Kevin was just a distraction, but you're the one I want to be with. Amanda, you were building a case against me while planning to continue cheating. This wasn't a mistake. This was calculated deception over 8 months. I love you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You're going to regret this," she said, her voice turning cold. "You'll never find anyone who loves you the way I do." "I certainly hope not," I replied, and walked to my car. 2 weeks later, Rebecca made good on her family's threats and filed a lawsuit against me for $35,000 in damages, claiming breach of promise to marry, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and defamation. The legal papers arrived via certified mail on a Thursday morning, accompanied by a letter demanding I settle out of court for the full amount or face a protracted legal battle that would cost me far more than the settlement. I called my attorney, David Kim, who'd handled my home purchase and business contracts. After reviewing the filing, he was practically laughing. "Jake, this is one of the weakest cases I've seen in 15 years of practice. Breach of promise requires proving you abandoned the marriage without just cause, but you have documented evidence of her infidelity. The emotional distress claim fails because she initiated the whole polygraph situation. And defamation? She posted her demands publicly first. So they have no case? None whatsoever. But I suspect they're counting on you being intimidated enough to settle rather than go through the discovery process." Discovery. That was the legal phase where both sides had to turn over all relevant documents, communications, and evidence. "Actually," David continued, "I think we should counter-cue for malicious prosecution and abuse of process. This lawsuit is clearly frivolous and designed to harass you into silence." But before we could file our response, Lisa Hartwell called with news that would make Amanda's lawsuit completely implode. "Jake, I wanted to give you a heads up. My divorce attorney served Kevin with papers yesterday, and during the asset disclosure process, we found something interesting. Kevin's been hiding money in offshore accounts, and Amanda's been helping him." "Helping him how?" "She's been acting as a go-between with his financial advisor, using her real estate contacts to facilitate some questionable property transactions. There are email trails going back almost a year showing she was deeply involved in his business dealings. The implications were staggering. Amanda hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been potentially involved in financial fraud. My attorney thinks the FBI might be interested in some of these transactions," Lisa continued. "Kevin's been laundering money through real estate purchases, and Amanda's been the one scouting properties and facilitating introductions." Within days of this revelation, Amanda's family's lawsuit strategy completely collapsed. David filed a motion to compel discovery, demanding all of Amanda's communications, financial records, and documents related to her relationship with Kevin. The response was immediate and panicked. Rebecca called David directly, requesting an emergency meeting to discuss settlement options. The meeting took place in David's conference room the following Tuesday. Rebecca arrived alone, looking significantly less confident than she had during her family's intervention at my house. She'd brought a much smaller folder this time, and her entire demeanor screamed defeat. "My client is prepared to drop all claims against Mr. Davidson," she began without preamble. "We believe this situation has escalated beyond what anyone intended, and we think it's best for all parties to move forward." David leaned back in his chair. "What about the $35,000 in damages you claimed my client owed? We're willing to waive those claims in exchange for Mr. Davidson's agreement not to pursue his own legal remedies." "Which legal remedies are you referring to?" Rebecca shifted uncomfortably. "Any potential claims related to the circumstances surrounding the end of their engagement." "You mean like malicious prosecution for filing a frivolous lawsuit?" David asked. "Or defamation for the false statements your client made on social media? Or perhaps conspiracy charges related to her involvement in Kevin Hartwell's financial schemes?" Rebecca's face went white. "We're not admitting to any wrongdoing. This is simply a mutual agreement to avoid further litigation." "I'm afraid that's not how this works," David replied. "Your client filed a lawsuit making specific claims. She'll need to formally withdraw those claims and pay my client's attorney fees, or we'll proceed to discovery where all of her communications and financial dealings will become part of the public record." The threat of public disclosure was the final nail in Amanda's legal coffin. Rebecca agreed to a settlement where Amanda would withdraw her lawsuit, pay my attorney fees, and sign a non-disclosure agreement preventing her from making any further public statements about our relationship or the circumstances of our breakup. But the real justice came 3 months later when Kevin was arrested by federal agents for money laundering and tax evasion. Amanda wasn't charged, but she was named as a cooperating witness, which meant her involvement would become public record during his trial. The woman who demanded a polygraph test to prove my honesty was now testifying in federal court about her role in helping her affair partner hide millions of dollars from the IRS. The irony was so perfect it almost seemed scripted. By this point, Amanda had moved to another state, supposedly to start fresh, but really to escape the social fallout from Kevin's arrest and the revelation of her involvement in his schemes. Her social media went dark, her friends stopped defending her, and even her family's threats disappeared entirely. The $18,000 I'd lost in wedding deposits turned out to be the best investment I ever made. It had cost me $18,000 to discover that my fiancé was not just a cheater, but potentially a criminal. More importantly, it had saved me from a lifetime of deception, manipulation, and legal liability. I used the time I would have spent on my honeymoon to take a solo trip to Ireland, something I'd always wanted to do but Amanda had dismissed as boring. Sitting in a pub in Dublin, drinking a Guinness and reading about Kevin's trial in the international news, I realized something profound. Amanda had been right about one thing in her original Facebook post. Polygraph tests really do reveal the truth about people. Just not in the way she'd expected. Her demands for transparency had ultimately exposed her own lies, her manipulation tactics had backfired spectacularly, and her attempt to control me through public pressure had become the very tool that freed me from her deception. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is having someone show you exactly who they really are. Amanda's polygraph stunt had accomplished that perfectly, just not for the person she'd intended.